at a few minutes after the hour. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off here and let people keep filtering in as they're going to. So hello and welcome to this session here going on April 30th. And we're going to see today how Takeda used generative AI to create report generation and document ingestion apps. Today we have a handful of speakers who are going to be part of the conversation. On the Takeda side, we have Jonathan Walter, Daniel Schauer, and Scott Wright. From the Microsoft side, my name's Matt Anderson. We have Juan Trujillo, who's going to be kind of on point, and then a cast of other characters that you'll see throughout the presentation who may pop up as we go through things here. As far as just a couple of items from a housekeeping perspective, this is a regular Teams meeting, but it does have a couple of moderator controls that are put in place. So as you may have noticed, if you're not part of the panel here, you don't have the ability to unmute yourself or come off of the camera. When we get to Q&A at the end, we will give an option to be able to come off of mute and ask questions live if you choose to do so. But also, we encourage you to use the chat to be able to ask questions. There's a regular chat panel marked by the little chat symbol up at the top of the page, and you can ask your questions just like you would in any regular Teams meeting. We'll go ahead and acknowledge your question using a little pin reaction. That means, hey, we see your question, and we'll get to it at an appropriate point in the conversation. When we get to that live question asking toward the end, go ahead and use the hand raise feature. We can bring you off mute, and you can ask that question live. Additionally, we do have the Q&A panel enabled. So if you have a question that you want to ask but not have it be in the normal chat, you can go ahead and use that Q&A panel. It does give you the option to ask things anonymously if you so choose to as you ask that question. We'll be able to respond in there from the folks who are on the backside here. As mentioned, the Q&A is going to be kind of behind the scenes, but we are going to be recording this session, and it's going to be posted to our app series page at the link in the slide that we have here after the session. If you're not comfortable with being part of the recording, go ahead, drop off. You have an opportunity to watch the meeting in playback, view only mode. But we encourage you to stick around here and stay engaged, ask some questions as we go through things. I think based on a couple of notifications I've seen, Shelly posted a thing chat asking everyone to share where they're at. So, it's great to see at least a few Microsoft people trying to get things started there. I encourage all the audience there to get involved there, use that chat early and often. And I'll also say, as we're going through the presentation, feel free to use the reactions up at the top of the page as well. If you like something, give it a clap, give it a heart, thumbs up, whatever those things are. Super excited to have our presentation getting going today. There's the thing about getting going in chat. And with that, we're going to go on to the presentation. So at this point, I'm going to be turning it over to Jonathan. So Jonathan, go ahead and take control of the slides and kick things off, my friend.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. So my name is Jonathan Walter. I'm part of the non-clinical regulatory writing and submissions team in Takeda. The work of our team and much of what we'll talk about here today is really wrapped around how we're able to help accelerate Takeda Pharmaceuticals' delivery of drugs to market. We're in the non-clinical space, so we're in that gap around the animal studies, taking the material documented there from the scientific work and the studies and such, getting that into written format within the team. We've got some technology capabilities right within our line of business, which is great for us. And so we've been leaning into that Microsoft Power Platform, and that's really where this conversation has come together. Been working with Juan Trujillo from Microsoft and other team members on how to best use that, things to optimize some of the automation functions that we can deliver. And that's brought forward for me one of the big lessons learned that I'd love to pop forward right away is having a close relationship and sharing what you're working with your vendor partners is a great way to learn where they can help. Because I would not have known of the Microsoft code with effort without Juan being involved in the work that we're doing. He's the one that said, hey, I think I hear a potential here. Let's talk about this and what are some of your use cases. So through that discussion and working on some of the things that we've been trying to accomplish within that power stack, that's brought forward some of the examples we'll get into here today. One thing to note, and this might be a bit of sharing the celebration right early, but I'll take the thunder. Microsoft really deserves the credit on this. It's something that we found at Takeda, we couldn't do this fast. On the chart here, we've got established the timeline for this. And so the examples that we're demonstrating today, this was all created by our team within Takeda, handful of people in my group, and then some of the members from Microsoft as well. So small team handling both of these efforts. This was all delivered inside of 2 weeks. We've got 2 weeks cited on the chart. I'll tell you the truth. It was actually 6 functional days because we suffered some administrative setup things to get into people to the conversations and access. And it's one of the things that after we were done with this, we looked back and we're like, oh my goodness, we did that. Gave us a little bit of hope and opportunity around how quickly you can do things when you've got the tools set up and you've got the capabilities and you brought a clear use case of here's what we're trying to solve for. How the heck can we do it? And that was much of the fun of the whole effort. So let me go over the use cases and then we'll hand it off to Daniel Schauer, who will walk through some of the demonstrations. So our first one I'll talk through is our non-clinical report generation. So at the risk of boring you to tears, I'll try and keep it succinct, but effectively, our scientists in the non-clinical space are doing research, and we've got electronic lab notebooks that are generated from that, facts, data, tables, all the details around what they did. It's our team's job to get that into written format, into a study, and within a program, there's appropriate templates to follow and such. We've got that documented well for our organization. And then maybe even more importantly, that we've got it submitted appropriately to the FDA when we get to that stage. If you can imagine, to go from the scientific work to getting that story written up in template format, there's a lot of time associated with that. One of the big functions is read, digest, understand the information that we have in those lab notebooks, and get that written into the study report. If you're specifically in the pharma space, we focused on pharmacokinetics just due to the standard nature of the information within that and the volume of data that we had there. So this was our first effort. Can we generate a first draft of this report from the information that we have to then let the writer work from that and tune and tweak and really accelerate the whole process for us? So that was opportunity number one. The second opportunity that we had is wrapped around our e-archive process. If you can imagine, within the studies, the reports, all of the written material that we need to have for our own internal benefit, and then for regulatory compliance and all of the reasons to keep your data safe and sound, we've got a standardized archiving process. Our challenge is there's a lot of different types of templates and then multiple organizations. You might be working with a vendor on some things, different teams are doing things differently. There's acquisitions that are involved. So we end up handling thousands of different document types that are submitted in different formats that we're trying to sort through, figure out where do these go? Do we have the right information? Do we have the document classified, the appropriate metadata? Is it filled out correctly? And then submitted that we have it then archived appropriately. So the ask in this was, are there tools that we could use to accelerate that? Within this, we'll talk about doc intelligence and the usage in that space, but that's our second effort. So with those overviews, I'll pass the floor along to Daniel Schauer, who will share for us a quick architectural reference and then walk us through the video and demos.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, so hi, my name is Dan Schauer. I'm talking to you from Tacoma, Washington. I'm a part of Jonathan's team in the non-clinical regulatory writing and submissions, systems and innovation area. So yeah, if you can go to the next slide so we can take a look at that architecture diagram, please. Excellent. This is a look at a high level of the two solutions that we built. On the left-hand side there, we can see essentially a document repository that has documents stored in it, which feeds into a generative AI orchestration layer that basically generates portions of that report and then fills in the appropriate sections of the template and outputs the data back out to that same repository. On the right-hand side, we see a slightly more complicated diagram for what is actually, I think we'll find a more simplistic process as we walk through it, but it has more components to it on the Microsoft stack. So what we do is we have a document that gets received, a process runs to extract entities and other metadata information from it, storing that as a JSON file that is then stored back onto the document server. Then Power Automate processes that and parses the data, writing it out to Power Apps in a Dataverse table row for each of what we call key value pairs in there. That was a very high-level overview of those two processes, but hopefully as we walk through them, it will start to click and make a little bit more sense. So let me share my screen and we can take a look at the report generation piece, and then we can move forward from there. Okay, so this is a look at the web request that starts off the process to generate the report. What we are doing is sending the file name of a protocol document that has been uploaded to the document server. When that web request is received, it kicks off a logic app process that will basically parse that document, extract data from it, rephrase some of the language in it to change the tense from future tense to past tense. And then finally, pass the generated document portions over to the template to generate an actual study report document using our study report template and those bits of natural language that we generated. Here you can see we are refreshing the place where those output files land, and we're going to download that Word document that we just generated a moment ago. We can take a look at the results. And I always get impatient with this bit. So on the results page here, on page 1, I'm going to pause it just so we can quickly look at it. We see some basic study details that were filled in, the study ID, the report ID, the study director's info. Moving on here. Where's my seek bar? There it is. The next section that we want to jump down to is this list of abbreviations that we have started on. Of course, this was just a 2-week sprint, so we want to iterate on this and actually pull in the definitions for a lot of these abbreviations that we detected. But the first step was to detect them and output them to a table near the top of our study report. And then as we continue on here, we will find, here is the summary section that we actually generated from that protocol document. And the OpenAI Azure endpoint that we use to generate that language with. If we play from here, we can see that that first sentence, which is talking about fresh plasma from mice, monkeys, and humans, comes almost directly from, this is the protocol document here, almost directly from that study objective statement in that protocol. It's just been rephrased ever so slightly. And that's what we see throughout this document. In fact, if we jump forward here, we can take a look at the prompts that was used to generate, in particular, this section. And finally, this is the data that was generated, or rather the language that was generated from those prompts. And then I'm going to jump forward finally to the template where we scroll through. Any place here where you see these magenta background colored placeholders are places where we are inserting AI generated language from our tool. You can see that throughout this template. So that is a high-level overview and run through of the study report process. I will quickly get over to our document ingestion, and we can take a look at how that looks. Okay. So in this process, we are going to be uploading a file that to a location that has essentially a listener job that's waiting for files to land. And when a file lands there, it will kick off a process to detect things like whether or not a signature is detected, what the language of the file is, and extract some key details using what's called entity extraction. As soon as that file is uploaded there on the left-hand side, you can see in Visual Studio, the console start to output the data of the job that is running. And then in the output section here, we should see, there we go. So this is a view of the process running. It's chunking the file to read in that data. And then it will go through and run its various steps here to do the classification, the detection of the language. Eventually, it will say that we output our file. So there we go, store results. So at that point, we should have an output file on the server. So let's go back out there. We can refresh that job. And there's our file right there. We can take a look at that on this Edit tab here. And this is the data that we extracted from that document and the entities. It's stored as what's called JSON or JavaScript object notation data, which then a Power Automate file is listening to that location. And when a new file lands there, this Power Automate process will parse that JSON data and then output it to a Dataverse row using the extracted key value pairs from that object. So now on the right-hand side here, we can see a simple model-driven app that's looking at our Dataverse table. This is the table, the data source that is just the entire JSON blob that was processed and the file names. And then if we look at the related extracted entities here are the key value pairs that were split up from that JSON data and stored into our Dataverse rows. Okay, and that's the end of the demo video as well. So that was a quick run through of our document ingestion process. And I will go ahead and stop my screen share and pass it back over to Jonathan.
Juan, do we want to step into Q&A or?
Yeah, so I think it looks like we have some questions. Somebody raise their hand.
Yeah, hey, this is Shelly. I will kick us off with a question. Jonathan, when you opened, you talked about the speed or time to value in the 2-week engagement with the CodeWith team, but it was actually only 6 days. I mean, what do you think enabled your team to be able to go so quickly with this project?
So there were 2 things for that. One was availability of the technology, right? The space to do the development work in, and then the team members on both sides. So for our group, we just cleared calendars as needed, made it the priority for those 2 weeks and got it done. It was the same thing for Microsoft. So it was all hands on deck, which was awesome. Within prioritization of work, you clear some space and some good things can happen.
So if I may add to that, so one, I mean, we've done similar engagements with other customers, but the great thing about working with Takeda is that they were willing to experiment, willing to innovate, willing to just try things. When we started, we didn't have an architecture. We didn't know which direction we were going to go. We had a problem. We knew we had like Jonathan mentioned, we had the tech to solve it and the skills on both the Takeda and the Microsoft side. And we started experimenting, figuring out which direction we were going to go. And I think that's what made it successful. Like we were open to do things and to try things and to fail as well.
Yeah, well said, Juan. Thank you.
Any other questions?
It looks like there's a request to display the architecture diagram again, if that is handy.
Yep. Do you mind doing that, Daniel? Maybe you have that, or maybe Matt.
I can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
So if anyone wants to ask anything either about the architecture of the solution, which thank you, Shelly, or around how the code with engagements work, about the actual problems we solved, please either raise your hand or put your question on the chat.
Hey Juan, this is Rob McKenna. I have a question. How did you guys find working with Logic Apps as the orchestrator here? Because we see lots of variations and examples and samples floating around. You know, whether you get deeper into using other orchestrations, but Logic Apps to me seems like the logical component to use in many of those. And you see a lot of examples that are overcoding. It seems like a perfect use of logic apps here? How did you guys find using that in this scenario?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, it's a great way to orchestrate. So we had a couple of components there, a couple of functions, a durable function, a regular Azure function, and we had to get some orchestration built around that. And yes, I mean, working with logic apps. I'm originally a Power Platform guy, so I come from the Power Automate world, and just using logic apps seems straightforward and like you said, the logical step there for a quick way to orchestrate a process within a 2-week sprint. So it was in our case, I think it fit perfectly.
Awesome. Yeah. Just in observing so many different orchestration scenarios, it seems like there's a lot of them are overthinking it, where the easy connectors and just the back and forth for ramping it up pretty quickly and getting going. So.
And if you want it, I mean, if you're a code guy, a lot of people in our audience are code guys and code first guys. So I mean, you could also put another Azure function there. You can do many different things, but I think for this type of engagement, for the speed we needed and the simplicity we needed, I think Logic Apps was the way to go.
Great, thank you.
I think we have Camille put the links to the two repositories in the chat. Everybody's welcome to go into those repos to look at the code we built. All the code is public. That's how we engage with our code with customers. We build together, and the code is available in the repository. Sheena, I think you have a question.
Sheena, I just enabled your mic. You can come off mute and ask your question live.
Great. Yeah, this is an awesome project. I really like how you highlighted the architecture and information about, the individual projects. I have 2 questions. So the first one is, I'm not familiar with the MS Code With program. So I'd love to hear more about like how the MS Code With team got engaged in this opportunity with Takeda and Microsoft. And then the second question is, I did see for the non-clinical report some of the business value and results that came out of that, which I believe saved 40 hours of somebody actually having to go through and manually write the report. But I'd love to hear more about what were kind of the business results that came out of these 2 projects.
Cool. So Jonathan, do you want to take on the business value, and maybe we'll go in reverse, and then I'll address the question on the code with.
Yeah, thanks, Juan. So from the value point of view, I prefer to talk in percentages than hours, because it's all right. It varies depending upon how much you have moving in. But if you can imagine, right, sitting down working to put together a first draft of that study report with just the scientific material versus, hey, I've had AI generate and fill it in. Now I'm more fact checking and working from that. We're seeing the potential there, and we're early in this, right? So to speak numbers isn't reasonable yet. There's clearly savings, and I think we're comfortable saying that we can get through that first draft within a 50% reduction, because you've got the data's pulled over. The laborious part of it's done for you, with a very good quality first shot at the summaries, like some of the things that you were seeing the Daniel pull out there. So on the e-archive function, that's allowed us to optimize the process as well, and then capture those items that get exceptioned out, which now then give us an opportunity to find, well, hey, every one of these types of templates gets bumped out because we don't have an answer for it. Let's go solve for that and standardize to see if we can pull it together. So there's some immediate win with that, with those that are submitted appropriately get moved right through. And those where we have errors or issues, we can start pulling data around them and working those, and really optimizing that process as we continue to move things through it. So
cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so no problem. So Sheena, on your question on the code with on code with team, and I'm sure my teammates will keep me honest here, but we have some requirements around how we can engage with customers, but mostly they're around the readiness to work with AI technologies, right? Having access to an Azure OpenAI endpoint, having the resources, in this case, developers, people like Daniel, Scott, that and others in his team that helped us build the solution. It's not, we don't code for our customers, we code with them. So that readiness, that willingness to innovate, that accessibility to the actual resources. Again, thank you for the slide, Shelley. That technical expertise, we'll transfer that knowledge as part of that those repos you saw in the presentation. So if you have a use case, which is also one of the most important pieces of that requirement, then we'll work with you. We'll engage. We'll have a team of cloud solution architects working with you. In this case, we had 4 cloud solution architects on the Microsoft side working on parallel in these 2 use cases. So those are the main requirements and the main I guess parameters that we use for those engagements. Does that answer your question, Sheena, on that note?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And Sheena, Juan's being very professional on that. So for me, I was maybe similar to your situation of not even knowing of this, right? So we were talking in on that doc ingest, and Juan was like, "Hey, I think we might have. Let me tell you about this what we were calling a dev with, but this code with effort." So that's when I was like, I didn't even know of it. Like it was word of mouth for me. So without having been engaged with Juan from Microsoft, right? So really being close with your partners, trying to solve your issues and talking about what you're working on, having him know what we were trying to accomplish, brought this forward. And then came this scope of saying, hey, what's in bounds of it? So that's when we brought then forward let's talk about this AI Gen case for this study report that we're doing as well. So that's where they both came from. So
That's awesome. This is a great program. I just had one last question about this. Juan, like how long did it take you once you were presented with this project from the Takeda team? Like how long did it take you to get like the approvals and the resources from the CSA team to get the code with project started?
So from the approval process, it wasn't. I mean, how long did it take us, Jonathan? Probably a week or 2. It's more about finding a spot in the in our schedule. We cannot promise you that we're going to be jumping in within a week or 2 into your use case, but we'll find us a place in our schedule, and we'll put you there. Is the idea of this team is to work quickly to present results as quickly as we can, and for you to have a solution that you can, again, it's the idea of this is to build an MVP, something that you can put in production and you can start getting feedback from your users.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll ask another question. From the Takeda team, like how is going through this made you think differently about generative AI, or maybe not differently, but how you potentially can think about generative AI in problem solving or solutioning moving forward?
Yeah, I've got 2 things to think about there. So one of them is, as we've got some other projects we're working on, I've changed my questions from a project output point of view. It's not just can we do this, but how can we set it up that we can do more of these, right? So don't just make the meal once, but set the kitchen up in a restaurant fashion where it's repeatable. So there were some things that we worked through, as Juan said. We came into these solutions without clarity as to what tool sets would we be using to solve it. So then how can we enable that type of sandbox or play space to get to do more of these types of things? So That's probably the big one. I think the second thing worth pointing out should be obvious, but this e-archive request, this is the first of many, right? There's document handling that goes on across our organization in a lot of different teams and a lot of different spaces and cases. And so where we could, if possible, we were trying to take a containered approach to each of the functions that we could plug these in or use some framework of this architecture for a different use case. Where our team is the one that's done this. We're very aware of some other groups in the organization that handle a lot more documents that we do, that as we get this moving along, right, saying, hey, here's a potential solution for the use case that you have there. So same thing on the Gen AI side for the reports, right? So we're doing it for PK. Think of the different study types, the different materials that you're creating. Where else could we do this as well? So a lot of potential lather, rinse, repeat.
Awesome. So it sounds like this, not only did you guys produce these MVP solutions for the business that would generate this non-clinical report in the e-archival request, but you also potentially have created a thought process around building out these types of solutions to be able to go into like a more rapid typing of building as opposed to long drawn out processes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Awesome.
Good summary. Yep.
In that same vein, Jonathan, do you think that within Takeda there's more of a way for you guys to think about, again, what you can do with Gen AI in other use cases, right? Do you think that these two use cases have opened maybe other possibilities for similar or things that maybe you thought there's no way we can use Gen AI here, but now after this it makes more sense to think about it that way?
Yeah, and especially in a large company, half the challenge is having success and then sharing that, right? So what are the communities of practice that you might connect into to demonstrate what we've done here? So obviously this is an externally facing version of that, but we've got internal conversations. We're working with different teams saying, hey, here's what we ran into. Here was our use case. Here's how we've solved it. People go, oh, I didn't know you could do that, right? So let's talk about how that pulled together and see where things can go from there. So. And Juan, you had asked me earlier, I think it was Sheena's question around this, the launch. Jeff Faddick had dropped a note in the comments here. From initial conversation to go, I don't remember timelines, but I do remember it was stunningly quick because I told Daniel Scott, I was like, guys, let's just clear calendars, let's do it. Like, we're launching Monday, let's rock and roll. And so we did, right? And so that was a lot of that jump in. So we launched super fast, struggled with a few things in those first few days, and like, it was 6 days of work, and we got into that and it was go. So that was one of the big takeaways. But so if you've got access to the systems, the tool sets that you need, and you got the team ready that's working on it, that's a good deal. Probably one of our best prep functions is we struggled with these use cases enough to know them thoroughly, to know some of the pitfalls. And that's what got us to the conversation with Juan in the first place. We were trying, like, what tools can we use to help us accelerate that doc ingest? So we'd attempted with a few other things and failed at, like, I throw a $5,000 page report at it. It reads the first three and quits, right? So size, scope, scale, different things like that we've tried with some other tool sets, that's what brought it forward. So knowing what we were attempting to accomplish very thoroughly and having wrestled with it a bit, I think gave us the clarity of, yes, that's it, no, this is not, and that helped us move forward more effectively in those sprints. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough the willingness to innovate, to just try and fail and learn from that. So I think that's one of the most important pieces about this. If you want this type of engagement to succeed, then you have to have that willingness to try things.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Yeah, actually, we have Ryan asked, is this program used from unified or proactive credits, or does it cost money? Can you talk a little bit about that?
We have Jeff and maybe Camille in the audience that maybe can answer that a little bit better.
Yeah, sure. I can help with that. It definitely is. It's a program available through your unified contract, and so whether it be proactive credits or other hourly contracts, we can find ways to apply the services that you have through unified towards this program.
Hopefully, Ryan, that answered your question. He said thanks. So it sounds like we answered his question. Thank you. Well, everybody on the call, we will hold this open for a couple more minutes for questions. Of course, you can raise your hand and we can bring you off mute or ask in the chat. But in the meantime, I just want to thank the Takeda team for coming and being vulnerable and sharing with us your learning so we can all get better together. It's not easy to fail, but to fail fast and learn from that and produce really amazing MVP solutions for your company that's going to bring value to them. We just, appreciate you guys and your willingness, not only to do the work, but to talk about doing the work. And so we appreciate that. And we invite the rest of our customers on the line. We are always looking for future customers to present on these. I actually have a couple of customers lined up that have recently completed a code with sprint and engagement, who we are still working on some logistics to be future presenters here either next month or the month after. So we are excited for that. And Takeda, maybe you guys can come back and listen to our future customers.
Perfect. Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, and
this is Jeff.
Go for it.
I'd just say thanks again, Jonathan, for doing this and all the working with you. And we'd love to do another sprint on any of your use cases again. It was great working with you. It's awesome.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we bide enough time. No one else has a question in the chat. So we will just go ahead and wrap for today. As I mentioned, we do have a couple of customers who are just trying to work out some logistics with schedules and times for our May session. So we will, blast this out on our HLS blog. You'll see the recording of today's session, plus any of those GitHub repos and resources for the session today. And then we'll have a new post in the coming weeks for the session that we're going to do in May. And so we look forward to seeing you all here in about a month. Thanks so much for everybody's time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, team.
Thank you, Takeda.